Hi, I'm Ruban Selvanayagam from Property Solvers Auctions. Property auctions have been taking place in Britain for almost 300 years, long before the estate agency industry as we know it today even existed. And whilst auction certainly isn't the right route for every property, it's long been the preferred method of sale in a wide range of circumstances. So in this video, I'll explain what those reasons are, the types of property that naturally suit auction, and why it remains such an important part of the UK property market today. Let's get into it. The first thing to understand is that auction isn't simply an alternative to selling through an estate agent. It typically attracts a very different buyer profile. The vast majority of estate agency or private treaty sales typically rely on owner-occupiers purchasing with mortgage finance. Auction, by contrast, has traditionally attracted investors, developers, landlords, social housing providers, corporate and cash buyers, amongst others, who are often prepared to purchase properties that many conventional buyers simply can't. And that difference alone explains why certain properties naturally gravitate towards auction. Perhaps the most obvious example is a property that's difficult to mortgage, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad property. It may simply require refurbishment, perhaps the kitchen or bathroom is no longer functional. There may be structural movement, Japanese knotweed, cladding concerns, non-standard construction, a short lease, flying freeholds, restrictive covenants, title complications or planning issues. Sometimes it's simply a very low value property where many mainstream lenders won't offer a mortgage. On the open market, these issues can dramatically reduce the buyer pool. At auction, however, many buyers actively seek out these opportunities because they're looking beyond the property's current condition and focusing on what it could become after refurbishment, legal work or redevelopment. The same principle applies to tenanted property. Most owner-occupiers want vacant possession. Landlords, however, take a different view. A property producing rental income from day one can actually be far more attractive to an investor than an empty house requiring a tenant to be found. As the buy-to-let sector continues to adapt to higher interest rates, Section 24 taxation changes, the Renters' Rights Act and increased regulation, we're also seeing more landlords restructure or reduce their portfolios by selling through auction. Probate and inherited property form another significant proportion of auction stock. Quite often, beneficiaries inherit a property that's been empty for some time, needs modernisation, or is located hundreds of miles away. Rather than spending months organising refurbishment, viewings and lengthy negotiations, many executors simply want a structured sale process with a defined timetable so the estate can be administered efficiently. A similar approach is often taken when someone dies without leaving a will. Selling the property allows the proceeds to be distributed more straightforwardly once the estate has been administered. Commercial property and land have also been closely associated with auctions for a very long time. Office buildings, retail premises, industrial units, mixed-use investments, development sites, garages, agricultural buildings, former public houses often appear on auction platforms and catalogues. Many commercial buyers actively look at what auctioneers are offering because they're assessing planning potential, redevelopment opportunities, returns, rental income, and future value rather than looking for somewhere to live. And auctions have always provided an efficient way of bringing sellers and those specialist buyers together. Repossessed properties also continue to appear regularly and are often fed through auctions via receivers. Contrary to popular belief, lenders don't simply want to dispose of them as cheaply as possible. Quite the opposite. Mortgage lenders and receivers are generally under a duty to achieve the best price reasonably obtainable. A professionally marketed auction where multiple buyers compete openly against one another helps demonstrate that the asset has been exposed properly to the market. And then there are the sellers whose primary objective isn't necessarily maximising every last pound, it's achieving certainty. Perhaps they're relocating, there may have been a separation or divorce, a chain has collapsed, financial circumstances have changed, or they've simply become exhausted after months on the open market with very little meaningful progress. Auction replaces much of that uncertainty with a structured sale process and clearly defined timescales. It's also worth mentioning reserve prices. Every auction property has a minimum agreed price between the seller and the auctioneer before marketing begins, which the buyer doesn't know about. Provided bidding reaches that minimum level, the property sells. If it doesn't, the seller isn't obliged to accept less. That gives vendors reassurance that they're not exposing their property to an unrestricted sale with no protection. Of course, not every auction property sells on the day. If bidding falls below the reserve, the property may be withdrawn or negotiations may continue afterwards with interested parties. Quite often, buyers who've already completed their due diligence remain interested, and a sale can be agreed shortly after the auction closes. So an unsold lot doesn't necessarily represent a failed sale. It simply becomes another route to negotiation. Ultimately, auction isn't about distressed property. It's about matching the right property with the right buyers through the right selling process. Some assets simply lend themselves to competitive bidding amongst investors. Others benefit from certainty, speed and structure that auction provides. And whilst the conventional estate agency sale will often remain the best way to optimise price for a straightforward family home, there may be many situations where auction becomes the more sensible decision. That's why, almost 3 centuries after the first property auctions began in Britain, they remain such an important part of the UK property market today. If you'd like a straightforward conversation about whether auction is the right route for your property, or you'd like one of our no-obligation auction valuation reports, feel free to get in touch with the team here at Property Solvers Auctions. And if you found this video useful, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more practical insights into how UK property auctions really work. Thanks very much for watching.